Hello, everyone. My name is Binod. Today, I'm going to present a research that I conducted in Bangladesh a couple of years ago. And this research was also presented at TESOL International Convention in 2023. The title of the presentation today is Global Englishes in ELT, Unpacking University English Teachers' Perceptions in Bangladesh. All right, this research was also published in one of the journals. If you would like to learn more about it, you can check it out. As we all know that the importance of English language is undeniable. It has been an international language, and the spread of English language has questioned the concept of English language, its speaker, and the users and the settings that it is used around the world. As English extends to the diverse socio-linguistic territories around the globe, it accommodates the features of other languages and evolves into different sizes and shapes, resulting in different varieties of English. And these varieties are called global Englishes. First, Larry Smith and Bharat Kachu introduced the concept of world Englishes in 1970s and 1980s. Since then, the spread of English has been discussed in multiple ways by the global Englishes scholars, such as world Englishes, global Englishes, English as international language, English as a lingua franca. These all concepts share pretty much in common in terms of goals, expectations of English language education, that they aim at preparing learners to use English with diverse speakers of or users of English. However, I will be using, in this presentation, I'll be using global Englishes as an inclusive terminology to include global world Englishes, English as an international language, and English as a lingua franca. So when we look at the population of the English language speakers around the world, we find that there are more so-called non-native English speakers around the world. And when we talk about English language teachers around the world, Brian estimates that 80% English teachers are so-called non-native English teachers. And the studies also shows that English does not only belong to the inner circle context, as Katsu categorizes English-speaking population and context into different categories. Every English user is an owner of English. This kind of ideology questions the notion of native speakerism, meaning that native speaker English is the best, or native English speaker teacher is the model, and calls for ELT paradigm shift from teaching and learning of native English speaker English or standard English to global English language teaching that emphasizes on multiple realities of English usage. Unfortunately, although global English scholars question native speakerism and suggest paradigm shift from traditional ELT to global English language teaching, a substantial number of ELT materials are still developed following standard English ideology. To change traditional ideology of ELT, scholars see an importance of exploring English language teachers' perceptions towards inclusion of world Englishes in ELT, as teachers play the role of change maker. As this study was conducted in Bangladesh, in case of Bangladesh, English has a distinctive socio-linguistic status, unlike its neighboring countries like India and Pakistan, since it's a separation from Pakistan in 1971. Bangladesh has been a former colony, but English is not used for multilingual and multicultural communication like in India. English in Bangladesh is taught and learned as a compulsory subject from grades 1 to 12. However, English language outcomes are not satisfactory, as the scholars from Bangladesh point out. Despite being one of the largest English language using countries on the globe, a dearth of attention has been paid in exploring ELT in general and English language teachers' perceptions towards English language teaching and global Englishes in particular. Against this backdrop, this study seeks to answer following research questions. How do university English teachers perceive the use of global Englishes in Bangladesh? How do perceptions of the teachers towards global Englishes inform teacher professional development or teacher education? All right, let's start with English language teaching in Bangladesh. It is uncertain to state where English in Bangladesh falls under Kachubian circles, whether in expanding or outer circles. With the new emergence of Bangladesh, the one state, one language policy was implemented despite the presence of myriad ethnic groups in the country. In 1972, the Constitution of the People's Republic of Bangladesh adopted Bangla as the language of the state. This move restricted the use of English language in different domains of society, for instance, education, which dropped the English language proficiency of the learners, as scholars pointed out. The Constitution of Bangladesh has no mention of the status of English and other indigenous languages, even though English is considered as the language of socio-economical upliftment. While Bangla overrode the English language as an indication of national identity due to the consequence of globalization, privatization of education, and the need of English for international communication, the English language got prominent space in national education policies. Currently, English is highly used in education. For instance, people prefer to educate their children in English medium schools rather than public schools. The students learn English for about 12 years from grade 1 to 12 at secondary and higher secondary education before they pursue university education. However, scholars argue that the students can't develop their English language proficiency required mostly in speaking. As a result, in 1996, the Ministry of Education transitioned the English language teaching curriculum from grammar translation method to communicative language teaching, advocating the necessity of English communication. But the scholars still complain that CLT, communicative language teaching, is not even successful and effective in bringing expected outcomes in developing students' English language in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, like other developing countries in the region, adopts the prescribed, most of the materials are prescribed, and also the methods of teaching, along with curriculum developed in the West without contextualizing and appropriating them for local context and learners and country. To improve ELT in Bangladesh, as scholars suggest, the curriculum innovation should be conducted considering what is appropriate for Bangladeshi context. So that was about English language situation in Bangladesh, but let's look at English language teachers' perception towards global Englishes in general. Teachers from inner circle, outer circle, and expanding circles of Kutchu's categories expressed in the studies that global English-informed pedagogies are important for English language teaching in Australia. The study conducted in Australia to make students learn language to communicate with different English users of the world who speak different Englishes. Teachers, in the studies, it is shown that the teachers who got exposure to the global Englishes during formal education, such as universities, accepted the diverse nature of English and tolerated global Englishes. However, some teachers denied the legitimacy of expanding circles, circle Englishes, such as Asian Englishes. In the studies such as Tajuddin et al. 2018 and other studies conducted in different time period, teachers were positive about introducing global Englishes to their students or in English language teaching. However, a teacher in some studies conducted in some other contexts of the world have different ambivalent feelings about world Englishes and inclusion of world Englishes in English language teaching. Some think that they are, some of them are positive, some of them are really negative about including Englishes in English language teaching. In this research, there were 10 participants. A safe sampling method on a voluntary basis was used, and these 10 participants were selected from 2 universities in Bangladesh, Dhaka. There were emails that also shared the purpose and nature of the study, and semi-structured interviews were used from June through August 2020. The participants were consented to participate in the interview process and to have interview recorded, and finally to transcribe and analyze the interview. So a consent email was sent to 23 teachers. Only 10 of them were able to make it to the interview process. The reasons to select the teachers from these 2 universities are twofold. One, teachers from these 2 universities attended my research presentation on the role of Asian Englishes in education at the conference organized by one of the universities in Dhaka. That's why it was convenient for me to explain research purpose and issue. Number 2, it was accessible for me to get teachers' contact email from the conference organizing committee. That's why I selected these 2 universities and these teachers. To collect the data, online communication software called Zoom was used, and interview questions consisted of questions to extract demographic information of the participants and open-ended items related to world Englishes and South Asian Englishes. And these teachers taught in different levels of education, high school through the university. Some of them had 2-year experience of teaching English language in different contexts, and some of them had 20 years of English language teaching experience. So overall, the teaching experience of the teachers ranged from 2 years to 20 years. Participants spoke mostly 2 languages, Bangla and English, and some of them had their master's degree in English language teaching, and some of them had master's degree in literature, and both, and some of them even received their PhD in different disciplines. I collected data by taking individual semi-structured interview. The interview aimed at eliciting participants' perceptions about global Englishes, the use of South Asian Englishes in ELT, standard English, and global Englishes, inclusive teacher education. And the interviews were scheduled at mutually convenient time. All right. When it comes to data analysis, the interviews were transcribed verbatim and sent back to the participants for member checking and approval with a request to add or correct if they realized so. And after that, the codes were generated. To generate the codes, the interview transcripts were reread, and checked frequently in detail, including words, phrases, and sentences based on Van Manen 2016. The reoccurring substantial notions and concept in the transcriptions accompanying to the research questions were highlighted with colors to develop the codes. Then appropriate codes were allocated to the highlighted notions and concept. While several codes were derived initially from one set of data, they were later classified in different groups. These emerged groups of codes were combined to develop overarching themes by reading and rereading the transcripts again. And the data was thematically interpreted using recursive content analysis. So the findings are discussed in 4 major themes. 1, defining global Englishes, teachers' perceptions on inner circle Englishes, teachers' perceptions towards South Asian Englishes, teachers' perceptions on global Englishes, inclusive teacher education. Names of the participants to include extract from the interviews were replaced with T1 to T10, T1 being teacher 1 to T10 being teacher 10, to ensure teachers' participants' anonymity for the extract taken from the interviews. All right, let's talk about the findings now. Defining global Englishes. This is the theme where we'll be talking about teacher participants' perception about their understanding of global Englishes. Admitting diversity in English language, all participants defined global Englishes as the varieties of English language, such as Asian Englishes, European Englishes, African Englishes, with variations such as phonological variations. As we can see there, teacher 6 mentions world Englishes are the varieties of English uses of English, such as South Asian Englishes, African Englishes, Australian English, and Middle East Englishes. So I think the diversity of the uses of English is global Englishes. So I will not be reading all the extracts taken from the interview, but participants also expressed that they learned about global Englishes at the university. For example, teacher 1 talks about, we used to talk about world Englishes in the course sociolinguistics whenever we talked about the relationship between language and society. So when we talk about teachers' perceptions about inner circle Englishes, participants 9 out of 10 considered native speaker English important for learners to develop their English language. Some teachers also expressed that the American English is important to introduce in their English language teaching, because as teacher 2 talks about, America is the most powerful country in the world, the superpower of the world. They are controlling the economy, power of all the world. American English has a different style of pronunciation. No problem. We should have standard English. Of course, there are various pronunciation, British pronunciation, Australian pronunciation, American pronunciation, African English, Indian English, even Bangladeshi English. Also, we should follow standard one. Otherwise, which one is correct, which one is incorrect. We can't distinguish. So teacher here seems a kind of to avoid ambiguity for English language. It's necessary to follow the standard English. Also, because of the American supremacy in different parts, different dimensions of the world, American English needs to be followed. That's what teacher 2 talks about. When it comes to teachers' perceptions about South Asian Englishes, the findings show that some participants admitted an emergence of South Asian Englishes. They also were comfortable to use English of Bangladesh. It means Bangladeshi norms, values, and tradition. As teacher 7 points out, I always emphasize on Bangladeshi variety. By Bangladeshi variety, I mean the local materials, culture, and culture. You know, there are hundreds of thousands of British idioms and British ways of choosing words and expressions. Many teachers think of concentrating on those things, making students memorize things. I have seen some of the Bangladeshi people saying it's not your cup of tea. Cup of tea is not a Bangladeshi expression. I avoid these kinds of things. Although participants admitted an emergence of South Asian Englishes and wanted to use local materials, methods, culture in ELT, they prefer to use standard English, that is inner circle English, as they are used in different international English language testing systems such as IELTS. Look at the expression provided by teacher 10. Whenever you give an IELTS test, they don't consider you as an Asian. They have a standard. They want you to maintain their standard, not your standard. Whenever our students are taking part in IELTS examination, many of them are not doing well. If we could familiarize them with native English, they could have done well in the IELTS. As teacher 10 further goes, I'm not against using local English and resources. You have to contextualize with your culture, with your language, society. So that students will be feeling interested to study, to read, to engage themselves with the activities that I'm talking about with the study. But I'm talking about the source that has to be used. The source here means the standard, so-called standard English language. When it comes to teachers' perception on global English's inclusive teacher education, although many participants interrogated the legitimacy of global Englishes and preferred employing American or British English in their teaching of English, everyone aspired to participate in global English's inclusive teacher education proceedings if chance was granted. Look at the expression provided by teacher 10. All right, with that said, let's come to the discussion part. The study aimed at studying university teachers' perceptions towards global Englishes in Bangladesh. The analysis of the data revealed that most of the teachers preferred using inner circle English in ELT, corroborating with the findings in the previous studies in which teachers endorsed native speakers' norms over global Englishes and English as an international language. Teachers also believed that English learners develop English only if they are exposed to standard English. However, this result is inconsistent with prior research conducted by Takahashi 2017 and Solmas 2020, who found that teachers recognized a permanence of introducing global Englishes to English learners. Findings also show that one of the reasons to favor native English model in ELT, particularly American English, was due to American domination over the global economy and other affairs. This ideology of teachers does not support learners English language development to fulfill the social-linguistic reality of real-life English and its uses in intercultural situations, since non-native English users around the world with various Englishes outnumber the native English users. Classroom instructions should contain the activities that prepare English learners to use English not only in monolingual setting, but also in multilingual and intercultural contexts. Nevertheless, all participants acknowledged that the inclusion of learners' local context, culture, and materials, methods in ELT, and contextualization of sociolinguistic realities is imperative. While all participants stated that South Asian Englishes exist, some doubted their legitimacy in myriad international platforms, such as the International English Language Proficiency Test, IELTS. This finding is in line with previous findings, in which teachers ignored or denied World English's norms in ELT and English language proficiency test, disbelieving their legitimacy. The study shows teachers never had the opportunities to participate in the global-oriented teacher education or professional programs, professional development programs, such as workshops, conferences, seminars, and teacher training, either at national level or international. This dearth of global English-informed teacher professional development opportunities might have brought negative attitude in participants towards global Englishes. To fulfill this void, the ELT policymakers, teacher educators, and English language professionals need to conduct global English-informed deliberations and proceedings in TESOL, such as teacher education or teacher professional development programs, to raise teachers' awareness to multiple identities of English in a multilingual world. So in conclusion, we can say that the participants in this study denied the use of global English-informed English language teaching in Bangladesh and prepared so-called native speaker English model in English language teaching. And they questioned the legitimacy of South Asian Englishes in academics and the national testing system of English, such as IELTS. However, they wanted to include the local culture, materials, and methodologies in English language teaching. But the participants never got the opportunities to attend global English's informed teacher professional development, but they wanted to participate in such programs if they got chance. All right, these are some of the references that I included here if you are interested. And with that said, that's the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for listening.